We've learned just now is that basically we're going to have an extension of the military mission in Afghanistan for 3 more years, a combat training mission, a continuation of the mission which was contrary to what was promised in the resolution of 2008 and contrary to what was promised by the Prime Minister and effectively by the Leader of the Opposition, that we're going to do this without a vote of Parliament. And we think that that's appalling, that this is going on despite the fact that Canadians wanted and expected that this mission was going to end.
You say combat training mission, they're saying no combat.
Well, they're calling soldiers trainers. It's a combat training mission. They're training people to be in combat. It's a military combat training mission. It's an extension of the military mission in Afghanistan. It's an abandonment of the option to focus on development, which has been part of the thing. If you look at the 2008 motion, training is all over that. That was what really it was all about. So, you know, this is really a function of mission creep. We started in 2002. We've been there 9 years now. Last Saturday was the 9th anniversary of the fall of the Taliban. We're still there. We were supposedly there for a few months, and then we were there for 6 months, and then we were there, etc., etc. So to suggest that this is all covered by the 2008 motion in Parliament is laughable.
So the government says a vote.
What we had today, and I saw this, watched Minister Cannon carefully, is that we had a government who's not only broken their promise, but they've also reversed the focus. So what we have today is, in effect, an abandonment of the civilian-only mission and a continuation of the military mission in Afghanistan. And let's recall, 2 weeks ago, there was a plan for a civilian-only mission. The quotes are many. The hard, cold truth was that we were supposed to be out of Afghanistan entirely in terms of military and entirely focused on a civilian mission. As of yesterday, and now we learn today for certain, there is an abandonment of the civilian-only mission, and there will be a focus on military. Finally, what we've seen is not only is this an extension of a mission, but an extension of a Prime Minister who is abusing Parliament and abandoning a promise that he would go to Parliament for an extension of a mission like this. The only difference between what happened last year and the abuse of Parliament with prorogation on the detainee issue and this year is he is being abetted by the Liberal leaders, both Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Ray. Make no mistake, they could not have gotten away with this or will not get away with this without the help of Mr. Ray and Mr. Ignatieff. So I say to Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Ray, are you still happy with this? Are you still going to give them a blank check? Are you going to allow this military mission to go ahead without accountability of Parliament?
Where do you see the combat happening?
Well, it's a war.
It's
everywhere.
In Afghanistan, it's a war zone. All of Afghanistan is a war zone. If you listen to what General Hillier said last week, he said you can sugarcoat this all you want. You're in a war zone. You can't fool people about that. Everywhere you go in Afghanistan, when we were in Afghanistan last May, anywhere you were in Kabul, which is the capital, we were under close protection of Canadian soldiers with machine guns. That's the way it is in Kabul for foreign soldiers, whether you're inside or outside of the wire. In Kandahar Air Force Base, every soldier is required to carry a rifle. You know, we're in a war zone here, so it's a training mission. This talk about classroom activity is pretty amazing, given the fact that the literacy rate amongst soldiers in Afghanistan is terrible. And in fact, you know, last spring when we were in Afghanistan, the NATO general in charge of the NATO training mission, William Caldwell IV, said what they really wanted was combat hardened soldiers who can train the Afghan soldiers one-on-one. We're not talking about classroom training here. We're talking about military combat training, and our soldiers are there for that purpose. To call them trainers, yesterday they were soldiers, today they're trainers, but they're actually in the field, well, whether the field is inside or outside a base, doing this kind of work. So it's a continuation. The point is that this is a continuation of the military mission. There's no doubt about that in our minds, and I don't think there's any doubt about that in the minds of Canadians. We're leaving 1,000 soldiers in Afghanistan beyond.
Would you be willing to accept, say, if the government said if inadvertently the troops got involved in a fighting situation, that they be brought home? Would you be willing to accept something?
We're not willing to accept an extension of this mission, the military mission in Afghanistan. We think that what should be done, they should be listening to Canadians and doing what Canadians want, which is to say that we have done our share militarily. There are a lot of things that Afghan people need that don't come from a military mission. There are lots of people who can do that. Canadians have, we're abandoning the civilian mission that we had promised, as Paul Dewar said, and there's so much that needs to be done on the ground to try and help make Afghanistan work. You know, we've got a government there that is incapable of having the confidence of the people because they can't run it properly. They need a lot of help, and Canadians are in a position to provide that help. We're not doing that. Instead, we're focusing on the military side, and I think that's wrong.
How do you envisage...
Okay, let's not split hairs here. It's a war zone. In Afghanistan, the whole theater is war. And what I have, yesterday we had both the Minister of Foreign Affairs and other spokespersons for the government saying, oh, this is no different than Haiti. Mr. Ray on Friday said, oh, this is like Jerusalem, West Bank, where we have peacekeepers. Come on. Haiti is actually, last time I checked, not a war zone. It's where there was a horrific natural disaster. This is a war zone. So no matter where you are in Afghanistan, right, there is a threat of being under fire. So let's get with the program here. This is not about a peacekeeping mission like others. This is about a war. I have to say, though, there was a proposal in front of government to have a civilian-only mission. It was going to be funded to the tune of $550 million over 3 years. What we heard today, if you believe it, is that Minister Oda is talking about a severe cut to that commitment. If in fact you believe we need to protect women, human rights, democratic development, civilian capacity and diplomacy, we need to put our money where our mouths are. Instead, we're taking the money out of the civilian mission and putting it into the military mission. I think that's unfortunate, but most unfortunate is whilst those decisions are being made by the PMO and the Liberal Party, Canadians don't get a chance to debate this in the Parliament and no vote. And that is...
You say that 9 years is too long for the military mission. Cyprus took more than 20, for example. What's
totally
the cap
different context. As you know, the Cyprus conflict was entirely different. There was a totally different mandate under the UN. We have lost over 150 soldiers. We have done our fair share. As the Chief of the Army said, our folks need a rest, and there's other things that can be done. So with respect, it's an entirely different mission, it's an entirely different mandate, and we have borne an entirely different cost.
Is there anything you can do to force a debate? Like, are you asking for an emergency
Well, these are parliamentary debates that take place. We're calling on the government to bring this matter to a vote. We can continue to do that, and we will continue to do that. I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do here. But what we're saying is that this government fully intends, with the cooperation of the Liberals, to go ahead and do this, announce it when they go to Lisbon by the end of the week, and do this without consultation of Parliament, without a vote. Now,
can you ask for an emergency debate?
Well,
an emergency debate does not lead to a vote.
But just to be clear here, there's two things we can do that have a take-note debate, an emergency debate, but that's not sufficient because, and the Prime Minister said, oh, sure, you can have a debate, and Bob Rae said, oh, well, we can have a debate. Well, a debate without a vote is simply a conversation. We want to actually have a decision made in Parliament, and I have to underline the fact that we've had a Prime Minister who constantly abuses his power with Parliament. He's the one who promised to bring these issues forward to Parliament. He's the one who said that he would do it, and he did it in the past. And as I said, the only thing that is allowing them to get away with this is that the so-called official opposition is saying, we don't mind. And the theatrics we saw yesterday, I have to say, from Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Ray, that they were so deeply concerned about the details of this issue on the one hand, and on the other hand saying, well, we don't need a vote. So if they don't like the answers they're getting, what are they going to do about it? Because they refused to bring it to Parliament.
Why do you think they don't want to vote?
You'll have to ask them. Clearly, they've made an arrangement to do this. There's, if not a deal done in the back room, a deal done in full daylight.
Is it possible maybe the vote would be all over the map in their caucus?
That you'll have to ask the Liberal Party about the machinations of what the outcome of a vote will be. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at what Canadians want to see on something as important as the war in Afghanistan. Remember, this is the most important issue in front of us in terms of defense policy and foreign policy. And they don't want to have a debate and a vote. That's the most important thing. How political parties deal with it internally is an entirely internal matter for them. What Canadians want to see is, where are their politicians when it comes to a matter as important as the war in Afghanistan? And what they're seeing is Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Ray lining up with Mr. Harper saying, we don't need to bring it to Parliament.
Do you think at the very least the cost warrants a vote?
Look, the whole thing warrants a vote. I mean, this is a Prime Minister who came to power under the promise that these matters would be decided by Parliament. He is the one who said that in his campaign. In fact, he is the one who did it in 2006 and in 2008. Now he's saying, I'm the guy who makes the rules, and we're not going to go to Parliament. This is a massive break of a promise to the people of Canada, and I think that the people of Canada need to know that, and I think that that's what's really happening here, and they're doing it with the complicity of the Liberals, who have given them the carte blanche. I mean, Mr. Ray acknowledged yesterday that they had nowhere to go. They couldn't negotiate anything. They had given up the ghost to the Prime Minister. That's what we're in today. That's the sad state of Canadian politics today, where the Prime Minister can do exactly what he wants because they've been given carte blanche by the Liberals.
How do you vote? It would likely not go your way.
For the Prime Minister's flip-flop, because he was adamant, his office was adamant, his senior ministers were adamant throughout the summer that the military mission was going to end, not just Kandahar, but the whole country. So.
Well, we don't account for that. That's up to the Prime Minister to do that. Obviously, the decision was made outside of the country. Nobody inside the country seemed to know about it. We heard the news from Korea that this was happening, and it seemed nobody else was able to provide any information or details, which we heard even yesterday from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is rather odd. So we've got the Prime Minister making this decision on his own, based on whatever he heard from others outside the country.
But I can say that the ability for him to break his promise was entirely enabled by Mr. A and Mr. Ignatieff. He could not have gotten away with this without their support. And that's what is so fundamentally outrageous, is that, we saw the Liberals get up yesterday, all full of vim and vigor as to give us details. But yet, when push comes to shove, they're not going to do anything anyhow. So, he is able to get away with this and break his promise because he's been enabled by the leaders of the Liberal Party.
I understand that you don't think it's sufficient to have an emergency debate or without a vote, but are you asking for one anyway?
No, we're not asking for an emergency debate. The decision should be made by Parliament. An emergency debate just gives an opportunity for people to mouth off with no accountability, and I don't think that that's right. So we're not calling for an emergency.
No, and that's the kind of thing the Liberals would offer, and frankly, their idea of negotiating is rolling out a doormat and being walked over. You got to be able to negotiate here, and to say that, we'll just have a debate without a vote is, as I said before, just like saying, well, we'll have a conversation without any real outcome in the end, and that's not sufficient for something as important as this. Thank you.
How do you support a civilian mission given that it's a war zone?
Simply put, you put in place what we've put in place before, and that is take your pick. In Sudan, we've put in peacekeeping, we've put in people who are actually civilian trainers for healthcare workers, for people who are doing aid and reconstruction, who are able to work within the context of a conflict, but without having to engage in conflict. That's something that's been proven. I must underline, though, that we've said for the last number of years is that the solution to what is the war in Afghanistan is for a negotiated settlement. We know that that's being pursued. The problem is Canada is not actually pursuing that, and that's unfortunate. And we see now we're dedicating our resources to the military mission and not dedicating enough resources to the diplomatic side of the equation. And that's extremely unfortunate and will undermine, I think, our ability to help find a pathway to peace to actually end this war.
So if you voted yea, you'd be okay with the mission?
There's plenty of civilian work going on today. We've heard last week from Care of Canada talking about the work being done with women's groups. They need more support for that. That's being done. It's been done for the past 6 or 7 or 8 years and has been very effective. So that needs to continue. That needs to be supported. Instead, what Canada is doing is drawing down its support for civilian assistance and using that money for military effort.
And if Parliament voted in favour, say there were a vote, you'd be